So here we are in 2024 and sports bikes are making a bit of a revival, but not the big fancy 1000cc bikes and the 600cc bikes that I grew up watching. No, they are mid-capacity, sort of sub 700cc bikes, affordable, designed for younger riders, and this is Triumph's contender. It's the Daytona 660. Now the Daytona name is much loved by Triumph fans. It always represented their sportiest, top of the range bike. Bikes like the 955i Daytona was a real, not a game changer necessarily, but it was a bike that really put Triumph on the map. And for years Triumph sort of resisted making that big Daytona that fans wanted, but they did make a very, very excellent super sport bike, the 675 Daytona. Now that sort of fell out the range sort of 5-6 years ago when the market slumped, and we thought we were never going to see the Daytona name again. But now we are. It's 660cc and it's sort of aimed at things like the Yamaha R7, the GSX 8R, the Aprilia RS 660, bikes that we've reviewed on the channel. So it's been nice to sort of take this out for a spin and see how it compares. Now the thing that will maybe irritate some real Triumph aficionados is that the Daytona name, it's not a high-end model. It's fairly basic machine. Suspension is adequate, but it's not adjustable like you'd expect from a sports bike. Show up big piston forks. There's no TFT dash. The frame is steel, but they put this finisher over it to give it a more sort of faired-in effect. It's a faired version of the Trident, which has done really well for them. But it is more than just a faired version of Trident, because there's been a lot of work going on in the guts of the engine and actually makes a good bit more power. This at 95 brake horsepower is the most powerful bike in the class, along with the Aprilia RS 660. And if you're following racing at the British Championship, there's actually something called a Sport Bike Championship, where this, the RS 660 and the Yamaha R7 all battle it out, and it does pretty well. The USP of this bike is the fact it's got a 3-cylinder engine. All the others are twins. You could argue that Honda's CBR 600R is kind of a competitor as well. It's a 4-cylinder. And look, there is something special. They say 3 is the magic number, and Triumph's triples and Yamaha's triples as well, they do have an aura about them. When you twist that throttle, it does give you a rasp and a real connection, and I think it's got a bit of something about it that maybe the twins don't have in the class. And this has come in, and this is the most affordable bike in the class. It undercuts the Aprilia, undercuts the Yamaha, undercuts the Suzuki. It doesn't quite have the spec, and some of this stuff you have to buy as optional extras. So things like the quick shifter, which is standard on the Suzuki, you've got to pay extra for that on this. It doesn't have a TFT dash, suspension's a bit more basic. Even this is a white version, which you get for the standard asking price. But if you want another colour paint option, I think it's 100 quid more. So, you know, they've kept the price down from a marketing sense, but actually you could easily find yourself riding off in a 10 grand motorbike if you tick all the boxes. To ride it, I've enjoyed it. You know, it's quite compact. It feels quite narrow. It's got a sporting stance to it, as much as you've got a bit of weight over your wrist and you're a little bit sort of bum in the air, but it's not a real sports bike ergonomics like you would maybe expect 10 years ago. Triumph enthusiasts, as I would claim to be, would probably more put it in line with the old Sprint ST, a sort of sports tourer, a more gentlemanly conveyance to something like the Yamaha R7 or the Aprilia RS 660s, which really are racy and a little bit spicy in terms of ergonomics. I wouldn't say it's necessarily all-day comfort. I would say it's not quite as comfortable as the Suzuki I rode a few weeks ago, but it's reasonably practical, reasonably comfortable, and overall I've enjoyed it. I think you've always got to put yourself in the context of the potential buyer. And who's the potential buyer? It's probably a younger rider looking for the first sports bike, or maybe someone like myself in the 50s just looking for a manageable sports bike. And I think it ticks the boxes. It doesn't thrill me with excitement when I see it. It doesn't have the spec sheet bingo that you sort of expect on modern super sports bikes, but it does everything competently. It's well built, as Triumphs are, and it's very affordable. Overall, I think they've done a really good job with this. So in terms of, I'm a shorty, it's a very accessible bike. The seat height is 810 millimeters, which isn't the lowest out there, but actually it's quite nicely sculpted, and I didn't really find myself having too many issues with getting on and off it. So the Triumph Daytona 660 adds a different flavour to this sports bike class by virtue of the fact that it does have a 3-cylinder engine, and it kind of fits in. It's kind of weird in as much as sports bikes got quite homogenous. They all kind of were very cookie cutter and the same, and it feels like this new class, all the bikes have got something a little bit different about them, whether it's the Aprilia, the Yamaha, the Suzuki, they've all got a slightly different characteristic. This for me kind of sits somewhere in the middle in terms of its sportiness to practicality level. It's probably not quite as sporty as the Yamaha and Aprilia, a little bit more sporting than, say, the Suzuki that we rode. And which one you prefer is kind of as much about personal preference as anything else. What we're going to do, as we always do, we're going to write a full review for the Car and Ash website. What we'll do, we'll put a link below, give us comments on what you think about this bike, what you'd like to see more of on the channel. Until next time, thanks for watching, take care.